Just so you get an idea of my background, photos of churches, schools, nonprofits. The only thing in common is my partner, our boutique firm, has represented all these, probably in the last 48 months. So everything from 48-acre camps to the church buildings to cemeteries to whatever. So what is the big issues of nonprofits? The bottom line is there are nonprofits out there that own real estate. There is a perception that that real estate is not saleable. False. The issues really become one of what is the underlying zoning. If I have a church building, if I have a nonprofit and it's zoned residential, what are the chances of me getting a variance to put in offices there? I don't care what township and municipality I'm in. You got to have a lot of money, and it's got to be worth it, sort of like down in the Templetown area or in the center city, where the churches are in fact being bought for conversion to retail. Very rarely do they get the variances for the office, though. They want to keep it low density. So you still have to have about $50,000 to $100,000 to get all the permits done and all that. There's got to be enough money in there. These are multi-million-dollar deals. For the nonprofits up in these areas, you're not going to get those numbers. So the issue becomes one of what can you do with it? And then from a buyer side, what is, if I'm going to get a buyer to pay a premium for the property, everything has to line up identically. So we oftentimes refer to it as level 1, 2, 3, and somewhere else buyers. So our job is to figure out, are there buyers out there that can use the space? We just did a deal probably 48 months ago right up the street on a retail center. It was a medical office space, and it had all these medical fit-outs. We could not get anybody from a retail side to move in there. We did find a temple, a Hindu temple. They moved in, I'm sure. Yeah, so we were the agents on that. So we moved the Hindu temple in, who had enough money and enough resources to do their own TIs, convinced ownership that it wasn't worth it, just unloaded as a shell. And then some. Why? Because the buyer has to pay for the tenant fit-outs. They have to go in there with the dumpster and get the permits and do all the gut. And that costs money, which is where you're coming from. So the issue becomes one of, on a nonprofit, how do you find a buyer that slides into your building that was your building built for your denomination, your specific need? It's not often easy. So level 1, you got to keep in mind the supply-demand type of thing. So level 1, level 2, level 3. Think of it that way. And the other thing comes into the idea is, for nonprofits, a big issue becomes pricing it right up front. Why? If I put a church on the market or a school or whatever on the market at $1 million and it's only worth $400,000, what have I basically told the market? I don't want to sell it. I just want to throw it out there. This is the same as residential. The problem is on the commercial, everything is extended by 3 months. Think about just the financing. How quick can I crank a finance deal for a commercial property? How quick, if I came to you with an ideal buyer, could you do a deal?
So let's say a very good credit, very good buyer, good credit, probably get an approval within, say, 3 weeks, and then you're taking a look at doing the appraisal, which takes 4 weeks. You got to do an environmental, which is done 4 weeks for an appraisal.
Yep.
You got to do an environmental study, which is done sooner than the appraisal, so it's done during the same time. And then if you're utilizing outside counsel to document the loan, it could be another 2 weeks. So you're talking, could be like a 3-month.
Okay, and that's assuming that I found the ideal buyer and everything's lined up and all that. On a residential deal, how quick can I get financing?
My daughter got one in 3 weeks.
Okay, here's the difference. So if I overprice the property and I basically tell the market I don't want you to be buying this anyway, after 6 months when somebody finally gets in their mind, I'm out of cash flow and I need to sell this thing, I then have to go back and reinvigorate the market. Then when I find the ideal buyer, I'm still out 3 months. And you as the nonprofit are still having a burn rate on your cash flow of how many thousands of dollars a month. It doesn't look pretty and it doesn't get pretty. And that's the problem we have with the nonprofits, and also really in commercial real estate. People lose track of the fact that everything's extended by multiples of 4 and 5. So I rarely get to a close within 6 months. So it's just the nature of the beast, and that's why I run with anywhere from 15 to 30 listings. It depends on the time of the day, because I got to run 4 and 5 deals simultaneously, and that's the way I make it work. So the issue becomes one of, and here comes another problem that people don't think of. Think of this like a car. If you go out, I always tease people, I love Subarus, and part of it is the price is right. But if I go to a dealership and they say, I'll sell you that Forester for $50,000, you know, a typical Forester is, what, 20 to 30, round numbers, depending on your add-ons. Well, I go back to that dealership. I probably won't. I'll walk away. And if I then am asked to go back to the dealership and they said, I'll give it to you at the right price, what am I naturally going to do? Am I going to pay them the market rate for that Forester, or what am I going to be as a business person? I'm going to say, give it to me for 10% lower, and then I'll come back to you. What makes us think real estate isn't the same thing? It's a commodity. So when I overprice a property, and then I finally get real and I say, let's sell it, what do I really have to do in order to make that market come back to that property? I drop it below the numbers. Now, in another 6 months afterwards, the market's forgot about it, and I can pull it back up to conceivably the appraised value and maybe get a sale out of it. But the bottom line is as a nonprofit, can I hold on to it for 12 months? I'm already 6 months before I come to the realization. I'm out for another 6 months for it to settle back in. Your burn rate is what, $10,000 to $30,000 a month just to hold the property? What have I gained? And this is the conversation. And it goes on and it goes on and it goes on. Anybody in nonprofits experience this? Or am I blowing smoke on this?
Well, this happened at Second and Duncan in North Israel. So it was on the market for, I don't know, a couple of years.
Right.
Finally, they found a kidney dialysis center.
Right.
But it just went on and on and on.
Yeah, I've had a couple people make offers on that one. So, yeah. So there they, in some respects, did well by holding on because they got the zoning variance. But it took them 2 years to find somebody, and then the price had to be low enough. So there's all kinds of signage issues, and it's Cheltenham Township, another world. I've got a church right now over at Oak Lane, and Oak Lane is for sale over in Cheltenham, not far from that. So you want a church? I got one to sell right now. I've got 3 of them, so it depends on where you want. So there's all kinds of issues, and these things have to be kept in mind. So the issue is pricing it right, yada, yada, yada. How you do a deal on nonprofits is the same you do a deal as for-profits. So the key to nonprofits is identifying who the decision makers are. Oftentimes, the president of the nonprofit doesn't even know the right process. If you're part of a nonprofit, I would encourage you to break out your corporate documents, which is often the governing documents that need to be presented at closing. Make sure who can sign off. Believe it or not, sometimes it's the treasurer who needs to sign off as opposed to the president, because they're the ones that theoretically control the books. Does it require how many people? What is the decision-making process? And it's really not all the same. Anybody here part of boards? I'm sure almost everybody is a board member of something. And you can imagine. So the issue becomes one of, on nonprofits, identifying who the decision maker is. We run into situations where somebody says to the decision maker, we say, give me the corporate docs as part of the title search, because they need to be presented to the title and the closing conveyancer. And then all of a sudden we find out that they're not even the decision maker. So clearing the stipulations and getting the close is really a treat. So we're out of time.
Yes.
Joe, I was going to ask you a quick question. You and I touched on this on the phone. Could you share with us your thoughts on, between the school district and the Archdiocese, a lot of vacant properties that are being resold at a fraction of the cost? Any thoughts on that? And do you represent, and do you handle any of those?
We have handled 1 or 2, and by and large, our clients tend to be outside of the Archdiocese for whatever reason. We represent the Presbytery USA, we represent the United Church of Christ, Southern Baptists, and so forth. And we're happy with that. The Archdiocese stuff is fraught with problems. Where are the problems? The Archdiocese issues are so tough, because there's such a big gorilla, they hire appraisers to go out peg a number for the property value and then tell the broker to list it at that number. And then when the market speaks, oftentimes it's nowhere near it. So what happens is there's a maturity of 6 months, 2 years, whatever, and I can't function that way. I'm much better going straight in, head to head. It's the kind of person I am. You got to know your personality. So, so where the problem of the Archdiocese is coming from is that. The other issue of the Archdiocese is the buildings, by and large, are too large for the market's use. So most of the cathedrals, as an example, seat 500, 700, and there aren't congregations that are big enough to support it. Other problems that come up is by virtue of their building style, they put the roofs up 40 and 50 feet. How do you fix the roof? What is the cost of fixing a roof that's 40 feet up?
You know, I belong with that Shalom.
Okay. So I'm talking the same
want to know.
stuff. Right. So when a congregation buys that building, they have to maintain that and get somebody up there. So the roof costs, the maintenance costs on these buildings are just egregious. Bottom line is, most of the time these buildings are worth land value alone. Less what?
No, the cost of tearing it down.
Less the demo cost. So where's the value? There isn't. Give it to me for $1 and I'll take it over. And the problem is the seller has it in their mind that it's worth more. So that's a broad idea of where this is going. Yeah, we deal with this all the time. I can't sell buildings that seat 500 and 600 people. We list them, but we don't sell them.
The Archdiocese had no trouble selling their property in Denver.
Yeah, they do have
Developed
trouble.
right now.
Yeah, well, only those that are redevelopable. But there's several that are
On
not.
the beach block, you had no problem.
There's several that are not. But I'm saying to you, if in fact it's a church and stay a church, there are problems. Yeah. You're asking me and I'm saying that's
No,
where
I'm talking
this is.
about the big house they had, they used for,
Yeah, the rectory. Yeah, the manse or the rectory. Different
it
animal.
was a block from the beach.
Yeah, the block from the beach is mine. It's a different animal. Under all is the land value. That's the name of the game. Yeah.
You take 30 seconds to touch up on residential if you can.
I'm sorry?
Residential, like in 30 seconds.
I don't sell houses. I just sell them in bulk.
But you do commercial.
Yeah.
Somebody else to talk about residential. That's a good idea.
So, okay.